What is up, guys? Today I'm going to talk about why Los Angeles is so hard to photograph. Now, I have always heard mixed reviews of LA. Some say that it is a sprawling, car-dependent hellscape with an inhospitable climate full of wannabe celebrities. But then you see influencers posting pictures of sunny beaches and palm trees and drinks with friends, neon lights, and chance encounters with the rich and famous, and suddenly, LA actually looks pretty cool. So I was excited to go there and find out for myself what Los Angeles is all about. I knew that the city was car-dependent, but I figured that I would be able to get some good photos if I really applied myself, regardless of any mobility restrictions I may have suffered by not renting a car. I spent 5 days in LA and maybe 16 hours on foot, taking street photos and visiting different kinds of photography-related destinations. I went to LA's biggest camera store, Sammy's, which is 5 floors of camera-related goodness, and I also talked with some folks from Freestyle Photo who gave me this shirt and some really interesting film rolls that I will be reviewing in a future video. I also visited some iconic photographable locations such as the lighting exhibit outside LAKEY, Hollywood Boulevard, Chinatown, Little Tokyo, and the Walt Disney Concert Hall. I really gave it my best shot. I gave LA the best chance that I could give it in 5 days. And now that I have seen as much of the city as I possibly could on foot in 5 days, I have some conclusions. And I have concluded that LA is in fact a sprawling car-dependent hellscape, and I don't think I took a single good photo the entire time I was there. At least not a good photo that was specifically of LA. In this video, I will talk about my experience in LA with some insights into how car dependency and privatization of public space impacts the character of those spaces, and why that's bad for everybody and not just photographers. So I imagine that LA, like other car-dependent cities I've visited, would contain a series of small, walkable, touristy, commercialized areas that are separated and connected by sprawling lanes of traffic. I did not imagine that there would actually be no walkable spaces whatsoever. This is probably not true based on what people have told me since I got back from LA, but at the time exploring the city, it very much seemed to be the case. Throughout the first few days of my trip and my first hours on foot, it felt like I was constantly looking for something. I was looking for the destination, the place that the roads led. I was staying in the heart of Beverly Hills, but when I first arrived at the hotel, I thought that we were in some kind of transitional suburb because we were completely surrounded by roadways on all sides that were 5+ lanes wide. I usually like to explore cities in the most natural way possible, letting main roads and eye-catching buildings kind of guide me forwards and going in whatever direction looks most interesting at any given time. This usually works really well for me when I'm doing street photography, but not in Los Angeles. So I set out walking from my hotel towards what I thought might be a shopping district. I mean, Beverly Hills is where the rich people live, and when rich people dress up just to be seen, typically they like to have somewhere that they can go to walk around and be seen. But I wasn't able to find this in Beverly Hills. I was walking around looking, and I'm like, where are the spaces for the flaneur? Everywhere I walked, the sidewalks were very wide, but completely empty of pedestrians. As I walked, my dreams of stopping fashionable passersby and asking them for street-style outfit pics quickly melted away as I realized that people simply don't walk around in LA, at least not in the parts that I was visiting. The photos that I took on this first day were all of things that can be seen from cars, so signage and billboards and parking meters and things like that, and I took absolutely no shots of other people. I walked towards Beverly Center, which is this big shopping mall that looked massive from really far away. When I got up close to it, I was completely awestruck to realize that the first 5 floors of the mall are completely dedicated to parking, and that the interesting blocky kind of architecture of the building was designed to conceal all of those many layers of parkade. Around the mall area, there was a little bit of foot traffic, but I really got the impression that it was all just people who were going from the parking lot to the mall. And as I walked on, all of that foot traffic quickly disappeared as I neared Sunset Boulevard. Sunset Boulevard itself is a very iconic location and yes, very photographable with lines of palm trees, but the boulevard itself isn't really a boulevard at all and is more just another overwide street full of cars with a nice view of the sunset, I guess. A few blocks over and up from that and another hour of walking brought me to Hollywood Boulevard, which was the closest thing to like the walkable touristy area that I thought I was looking for. So my takeaway from this day was that I had maybe been misled about the cultural character of Beverly Hills in general. I decided that maybe Beverly Hills wasn't the go-to destination that I had come to believe it was, and I resolved instead to go and explore the downtown core on my next full day of street photography. And let me tell you, Oh my god, downtown LA was completely baffling. Trying to photograph downtown LA was an absolutely bizarre experience that really inspired me to make this video. I realize now I am sounding a little bit pretentious in how I'm describing LA, but it's like, LA is so glorified, I don't think I'm punching down. Sorry if I sound pretentious, but trust me, LA is doing just fine without my glowing review. Anyways, so I woke up, planned a route, wrangled my friends, spent 45 minutes on the bus to get downtown, and from where the bus dropped us off, it was a 38-minute walk to Chinatown, which was the first destination that I had picked out. We walk up 38 minutes along this large, empty, 5-lane freeway. But it's not a freeway, it's like a strode. And I say empty because this was on a Saturday, and on Saturdays, when there's no commuter traffic, I guess all of these giant roadways that populate the entire city are just completely barren. Getting off the bus did feel a bit like that first episode of Walking Dead when he emerges from the hospital and the city is just completely abandoned. And it's like, where are the people? I didn't take a single photo on the entire walk from the bus to Chinatown because there was simply nothing interesting to photograph. We got to Chinatown and explored a few small plazas. I did take some fun photos there, and then I parted ways with my friends after lunch and set my sights on a grove of tall buildings that was maybe a 30-minute walk away from me. So Chinatown was relatively bustling. It did have some foot traffic and some street vendors and a little bit of a sense of community, but the roads to and from this area were completely barren. And as I walked away from Chinatown towards the grove of buildings, I realized that the only pedestrians I had passed for some time were unhoused folks and service folks, so like parking attendants and janitors and things like that. So people who were too poor to drive and people who were paid to walk. I decided to check out the cathedral on the way, only to realize it didn't have the quaint, ancient charm of many cathedrals. It was just this large, blocky, Americo-fascist looking place. Walk away from that and towards this larger building that had caught my eye, which had a nice plaza looking area. And the plaza was elevated from the street, so I had to walk up a set of stairs to get to it. And upon reaching this plaza, I realized it was completely empty. There was nobody there except for one couple. And the man from the couple comes up to me and says, "Did you just come from parking?" And I was like, "What?" And he was like, "Is that the way to the parking lot?" Gesturing down the set of stairs that I had just come up. And I said, "No, I came from the sidewalk." And I swear this man looked confused. I walk around this empty plaza for a bit, and then I reach the Walt Disney Concert Center, which was sort of kitty corner to it. And this place is known for being one of LA's most frequently photographed locations because it has these really interesting, sprawling aluminum looking walls. And from the direction that I was approaching it from, it seemed like there was absolutely nobody there as well. Eventually, I did come across some photographer and model pairs, and as I moved through the concert hall, I got to the other side. After walking down this big hill into a grove of buildings, I did find what seemed to be a bustling area. There was a transit hub, and there was restaurants and a mall, and there's people walking around. But I had originally intended to stay down there until after sunset and capture some neon lights and things, and honestly, in the entire time that I had been exploring the downtown area, I didn't really see anything that looked like it would be interesting to photograph at night. And so I decided to go back to Hollywood Boulevard for sunset and evening and try to capture what I could there. So Hollywood Boulevard did turn out to be the one redeeming aspect of both of my street photography experiences in Los Angeles. But even Hollywood Boulevard, for all of its glow and bravado, is very short-lived. Like, it seems like it's only maybe an 8-block zone, like strip, and if you deviate even 1 block on either side of it, or 1 block after that like 8-block set ends, you're just in dead quiet again. Here is a bit of footage that I took with sound, literally on Hollywood Boulevard, like 2 blocks away from where all the theaters and the performers and everything are happening. I very much get the impression that people in LA not only drive from area to area, but from building to building. I'm probably exaggerating, this is probably hyperbole, but this was definitely my impression. So, that is car dependency. That is my description of car dependency in LA and how it impacted my ability to photograph the area. Now, I want to talk about what else makes LA hard to photograph, specifically the privatization of public space. In my video, Why is Montreal So Easy to Photograph? Go and check it out. I'm trying to make this like a series. I put emphasis on the value of public and shared spaces. So parks and plazas and green spaces, spaces that are used by communities and in turn shaped and colored by this use. I talked about how spaces become places, and that concept is very relevant to this video as well. The downtown core of LA is completely populated with larger than life buildings. each equipped with its very own security guard to prevent anyone from loitering in the area. There are vast stone steps and plazas, overpasses, viewpoints, and parkades, and all of them are privately surveilled and policed. This creates a landscape of spaces that are transitional. People aren't allowed to hang out in them, and so they're only ever moved through and never moved within. These spaces remain as they were built, clean, manicured, and generic. A city of entirely forgettable buildings separated by vast parkades. I understand why, from a building owner's perspective, you would want to keep your buildings this way, clean, manicured, but the overall character of the city contributes to this being the standard rather than the ideal. Compare this to New York City, for example, which is also populated by larger-than-life buildings, famously so, but the streets are teeming with people at all times of the day. The spaces are inevitably shaped by this activity. New York, like Montreal, is punctuated by countless public parks and plazas, places where people are allowed to linger and conduct the activities of leisure. There's buskers and street artists and painters and performers, people playing chess and scrawling chalk drawings. You've got street posts slathered with stickers or adverts for indie artists and long past events. These activities of a vibrant urban community tend to layer and build upon each other and color the spaces in which they occur. They bleed over into private areas despite the best efforts of the security teams because there is a home for these activities in the city in the first place. In LA, car dependency and privatization work together to make public spaces entirely inhospitable to leisure. They are transitional spaces, and these qualities leave them generic and uninteresting and particularly unphotographable. All this to say nothing of leisure time and lack thereof. In my Montreal video, I mentioned that comparatively low housing prices and a decent minimum wage work together to allow time for leisure activities, liberating citizens from the endless grind of hustle culture. Artists and students and everyone else tend to produce beautiful things when given the opportunity. In LA, I don't get the impression that leisure time is a big part of the culture. The minimum wage is relatively high at $15.50 an hour, but the average rental price for a one-bedroom apartment is $2,400 a month. So that's actually pretty comparable to Vancouver, and in Vancouver, leisure time is very much a luxury that is reserved for wealthy tech bros, a demographic which we share with Los Angeles. So when we see people saying good things about LA, we see them in the form of these perfectly curated Instagram feeds coming from LA influencers and those trying to make it big. But that in itself, in my opinion, is evidence of the hustle culture that grips the city. Even in leisure, every activity is commodified as content that may satiate the algorithm or further one's personal brand. Beach days, drinking with friends, neon lights, and rides in fancy cars, the leisure activities that LA is known for, well, the fact that there's evidence of these activities online, but not in reality on the ground in LA, that to me is evidence that true leisure time really is something that's out of reach for many in Los Angeles. I'm getting pretty deep into this, and this is a long video already, so I'm gonna call it there. But I hope that was an interesting little foray into why Los Angeles is so difficult to photograph. I did touch on a few topics, you know, mostly car dependency, but also privatization and lack of leisure time. All of these things, I think, contribute to the overall character of the city. And I'm sure if you grew up in LA or if you've spent a lot of time there, you've probably had a much different experience than I had. My video that I've made today is sheerly looking from the perspective of an outsider. But as somebody who didn't have a ton of time to get to know the city and really fall in love with it, this is really my impression. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you found this video interesting. I will have another video out next week. Like this video, subscribe, comment, engage, share it if you like it, and I will see you guys next week. Thanks very much, take care, stay sharp, and don't forget to keep shooting. Bye guys.